But speaking of the insiders, the GM meetings, the NHL GM meetings are going on here in South Florida. I looked it up, 23 kilometers from where I sit right now. Maple Leafs GM Kyle Dubas and the league's other 31 GMs heard from Director of Officiating Stephen Wacom on Monday as part of their first in-person meeting since COVID hit. This is my third point of the Quick Six show topics. Dubas and the Leafs were left seething earlier this month when a blatant holding penalty against Auston Matthews was ignored on the deciding sequence in an overtime loss to the Arizona Coyotes. This is where it gets good. The NHL's leading goal scorer has the puck on his stick often and gets plenty of attention from defenders, but has drawn an absurdly low 9 infractions this season. That puts him at a tie for 304th for penalties drawn, on par with the likes of Curtis Lazar and Warren Foegele. Oilers star Connor McDavid, on the other hand, has seen a league-high 44 penalties called against opponents checking him. Many have come after the issue was raised publicly by the Edmonton captain. I'm like, who wrote this story? Harold Ballard? It's like, where? Austin's getting picked on. Connor bitches and he gets the calls. So Dubas spoke to the media yesterday in Manalapan, Florida, and he added that he understands the difficulty of officiating an NHL game and how thankless the job is by nature. Dubas pointed out taking issue with officials is universal in sports. So what are we saying here? That it's a tough job and spit happens, or that Auston Matthews is being unfairly picked on by NHL referees? I would think that it might be the latter. That's just me. You look at Connor's cross-check to the head of Rasmus Dahlin from Buffalo. We got 2 games. Remember when McDavid cross-checked Licorice Legs in the head a year or 2 ago? I don't think he got anything.
Yeah,
he might have got a penalty. Yes.
Right.
So before I get your take,
Connor's ever been.
Well, just hang on. The poll question today for Capital Automall Universal Collision Center. Capital has dealerships all across the prairies. Do the Maple Leafs have a legitimate beef for the lack of calls against Auston Matthews? And it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook. I put it up like an hour ago, and the last I looked, 76% of respondents say no, the Leafs don't have a legitimate beef. I voted no. They don't. But I don't watch every Leafs game. I told you I watched them last week, and I was pretty impressed by Auston Matthews' defensive play. I was impressed by the team. But you can take it away. I have more thoughts, but I'm just going to vote no on that. And it just came across to me as a lot of whining from the GM. But where are you as the resident Leafs fan?
You know, I'd vote no too. But I'm pretty consistent with that across all players in the NHL. You know, I don't think whining gets you anywhere, and I hate seeing it. I don't like it. I don't like crying to the media. I don't like talking about it after the fact. You know, and this was always what I heard, you know, for a while coming out of Edmonton. You know, it was a lot of, you know, why isn't this penalty being called against McDavid? You know, these calls aren't being made against McDavid. And it was a bit of an issue, but maybe it worked because now he's getting all the penalties called against him. Maybe it'll work in Toronto. But I think that always happens with the Stars because when you're that much better, it's really difficult. People are going to grab you. They got to try and slow you down. So you're going to feel like there should be more penalties called than actually is.
Chipping in the chat, BW, I believe he's in Edmonton, writes in, he says, Eugene Melnyk was this generation's Harold Ballard. Randy from the Peg writes in and says, from what I heard about Eugene, he gave a lot to charities. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to hear a lot of great things about Eugene Melnyk. I don't have an opinion, good or bad. Never met the guy. Don't know anything about the guy. Sad that he passed at the age of 62. But you asked me earlier this morning about Gretzky, and even between Gretzky and Matthews, about Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby. And Sid, for years, did complain to officials, and let's be honest, he did draw a lot of attention. Wayne Gretzky, which you guys are all too young to remember, but he was habitually called a whiner, mostly by fans of every other team. But Wayne, while he did get hacked and whacked, and mauled, and he played in a different era, but they had Dave Semenko and Marty McSorley. So it's one thing to obstruct a guy. Right. It's another to I think we've lost the video feed for Moose, so you just keep talking. I don't know what's going on there. But he stepped out? Okay. Oh, did he get a phone call? Anyways.
No, I'm back. Am I back?
What happened?
Am I back?
What happened? Yeah, you're back.
At some point, I pulled out the power cord of my computer, and it was just giving me a low battery warning. So I was trying to subtly tell the boys, just take me off for like 20 seconds. I can hear Rod. Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know if you guys noticed. I pulled out my earphones about 25 seconds ago, but we lost
you need a better
cue.
cue
You guys
than that.
forgot the cue. I guess so.
If I start picking my nose, I've lost power.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that would be a more significant cue. Anyways, back in the day, while Gretzky did put up with some harassment, overall, you didn't touch Wayne because you would then have to deal with Dave Semenko and Marty McSorley, and that's just not the way the game is played anymore. And while I would like to consider myself somewhat of a Renaissance person, and I'm willing to adapt, I'm not an NHL coach. It's I don't watch enough Leafs games. It just, to me, comes across as a lot of whining. But don't you think, though, Rod's rant, okay, for Bronco Plumbing and Heating, why not? That if you do complain, it's going to go one of two ways. The refs are either going to listen, maybe he's right, and get the calls, or they're going to ram it even more where the sun don't shine. I think there's a chance that might be happening.
Well, for sure. And I remember that being a thing with Nazem Kadri. And the Brad Marchands and other pests that have some skill. But, when guys dive and the officials go and watch game film, just like the teams do, and they go and look and they're like, Brad really made us look bad last night. Nazem really made us look bad last night diving. So the next time they're on the ice, when, Brad Marchand or when one of these guys is high stick, is tripped, is held, they're not going to get the call because the referee's like, you made me look bad last time. My first instinct is that you're actually faking it or you're diving, and they don't get the call. So I think that plays into it. When people whine and stuff, some officials go the other way and make sure that I don't even give you the call the next time. So it's all about relationship.
Jeff, the Stamps fan, says Wayne had McSorley and Semenko. Hard to say what he would be like in today's NHL. I think he would have scored 4,000 points in today's NHL because you aren't really allowed to obstruct guys like that. We had that discussion with Lanny McDonald and Theo Fleury, and it's a fantastic conversation. I will say one more because, you folks say y'all like my stories. When I was calling major junior games and even the CFL games for years, all my incessant complaining about officiating never really changed anything. It probably did just make it worse. And I'll never forget, you've heard me bring up the name Mike Hassenfratz. You don't know who he is, but he was a legendary WHL official who went on to the NHL. He's living in Nashville now. But when I was living in Saskatoon, and Hazy was in the dub, we ran into each other in the parking lot of the Shoppers Drug Mart in Greenfields on 8th Street. July, sunny day. And Hazy, if you knew him, leaned against his Caprice Classic, took a drag from his dart, and he's like, yeah, the guys are kind of upset for you roasting them on the radio. You might want to pull back on that. And I said, tell them to be better and shut up. I probably shouldn't have done that, but anyways, the refs hear it. Trust me, they hear it. And it didn't make any difference. And I don't think it's going to make any difference for Auston Matthews.